know you guys live in Wellington. If there's an earthquake, get under your desks, drop, cover and hold, and if there's a fire, assemble outside of the building. And can I also ask that you turn your cell phones onto silent so we don't have disruptions through the meeting. Also, just a reminder that we do have members online, so if you could use your microphone to talk, otherwise they won't be able to hear. So I will start the meeting with a karakia, hi karakia timatanga. Whakataka hou ki te uru, whakataka hou ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. I hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hohu, te he mariora. Right, before we get started, a few bits of housekeeping. So around the table, we're pleased to welcome Kara Pukatapu Dentist as the representative for Taranaki Whānui. And actually, we've got that as the second item on our agenda, and I might move that to the first item of the agenda just so we can get our housekeeping tidied up before we begin. We've also got Councillor Simon Edwards representing Hutt City. We've got Deputy Mayor Melissa Sadler-Footer on Zoom, as you can see, and we've got Rauri Falconer representing Ngāti Toa here today. So, and for those that don't know, my name's Ros Connolly. I am the Greater Wellington Regional Council representative. I don't usually do the chairing, but it's my lucky day today. So, right. So in terms of apologies, I have received an apology from Mayor Campbell-Barry and from Helmut Modlik from Ngāti Toa. So I move that those apologies be accepted. All those in favour? Seconder. Seconder. Anita. All those in favour? Carried. Okay, we are lucky enough today to have two people who would like to speak to us. So first up, we have Sean Rush, and then following him, we've got Peter Barlow, who wants to talk to the year-end report, which is slightly off topic, but given there's so many interested people here today, we thought, what a better time. So Sean, if you could come up to the table, you know the deal. You've got 10 minutes. Three. Well, okay. You don't have 10 minutes at all. You've got 3 minutes, and we will ring a bell. Microphone, please.
How's that? Is that part of my 3 minutes? So do I need to pull that over? Okay. Why don't we just be clear about that, actually? Oh, it's not. And I shall get a bit closer. How's that? Test. Madam Chair, thank you. Delightful to be here today. For those who don't know, my name is Sean Rush. I was the Wellington City Council representative on the Wellington Water Committee from 2019 to 2022, or just short of the end of that term. I'd like to speak to item 5, which talks about the value for money report. In particular, there is some references there into restructuring and governance. And I want to bring to your attention something which I tried to bring to the attention of the committee previously, and that is there's actually a skills matrix that applies to the appointment of directors onto the board of Wellington Water. And it requires a range of different skill sets, as you expect, and I've got no complaints with the current board at all. But what I do consider as someone who's worked in the pipeline management business as the Todd Group's asset manager for the Maui pipeline is that we should pay good homage or deference really to the item which deals with water services experience, practical water service experience. And the other one is multiple directors must have infrastructure asset management experience. Now, when I read that, I sort of think about heavy industries, pipe cos, oil and gas as well. And I just feel that the board, including the chair, has been doing a great job as best they can, but perhaps not supported with those sort of heavy industry sort of folks. So I do wonder, this came out in Doug Martin's report for fluoride, where the lack of asset management planning was identified as being something which needed to be filled. I know that the board took steps then to appoint someone from Orican, who I think did fill that gap. She finished her term last year, hasn't been, a new appointment has not been made. So my suggestion is, with Mr. Doherty stepping down from the board, not being replaced either, you've got 4 very hard-working directors with a great broad skill set, but perhaps could be strengthened by having those folks with that type of experience as the Constitution requires. So that's my submission. I guess if I was putting this into an amendment for the paper, you'd add another recommendation 4 that the committee agreed to undertake a gap analysis between the skills matrix and the board, and then take appropriate steps if that was required. So that's all I've got to say. Happy to take questions.
Excellent. Do we have any questions around the table? No. Well, thank you very much, Sean, for your presentation. Awesome. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Shall I turn this off or leave it on?
Leave it on for Peter.
Cool. Good.
So Peter Barlow, yeah, excellent.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. As a concerned ratepayer, I decided I'd actually find out exactly what Wellington Waste get up to. And the first place I look is Wellington Water, whereabouts is your annual report? I had problems finding the annual report last week, and I've now established that it is actually on the website, it has been put on the website, and there's no audit opinion. I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on, but the contents of the annual report, including the financial accounts, have not got an audit opinion, which is on the website at the moment. As a ratepayer, I'm not prepared to wade through 74 pages of a report which has not been audited. And I want to know whether or not the audit opinion has actually been received, and if it has, why it isn't on the website. I then turn around and look at the calibre of the staff in terms of salaries being employed by Wellington Water, and you're in a situation where you've got 171 people earning in excess of $100,000 per year. I'm extremely concerned about the comments in regard to fraud and the method of actually awarding contracts to different clients. It won't come as any surprise for any of you who have been reading Scoop in the last 3 or 4 days. There's tons of comment on there. I'm not quite sure exactly why no staff are actually employed who earn less than $100,000. I am very concerned as a ratepayer. I've forked out $200,000 for directors' fees up to June last year. Am I getting a quality annual report to the ratepayers? I'm extremely concerned. If you've got any questions, I'm quite happy to address them.
Do we have any questions? No. Thank you, Mr. Barlow, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we will get into the substantive matters of the meeting. Yes, so first of all, does anyone have any conflict of interest declarations that they would like to bring forward? There being none, we'll move on to the next item, which is, just checking, we're going to do Carter? Yes. Yeah. So item number 2 on the agenda was the replacement of the Taranaki Whānui representative, but I think we should do that first, given he's in the room, and I'm sure he would like to chat and vote, etc. So, Carter, before we vote on it, is there anything you would like to say? No. Any members have any questions? No. Okay, so the motion that we have is that the committee receives and notes the report regarding the replacement of the Taranaki Whānui rep, notes that Kara Pukatapu Dentis is to replace Lee Rohina August as the Taranaki Whānui rep from 5th of March, and that we would very much like to thank Lee Rohana August for her valuable contributions to the work of the committee. Would someone like to move that? Representative Faulkner, someone second it? Mayor Baker. All those in favour? Excellent. Well, that brings us on to our substantive piece of business, which is the value for money report. I thought I would make a few comments before we got underway, just along the lines of that this meeting has the potential to be divisive. You know, we all have our own opinions and we all have our own solutions on what should happen next. But I want us to remain focused on our common goal, which is that we are all united in our ambition to deliver affordable quality drinking water, wastewater and stormwater services to the people of the Wellington region. But there's little doubt that Wellington water is a challenge. Women still had not secured the right to vote before some of the water pipes in Wellington, some of the still operative water pipes in Wellington were laid. And on top of that, we have not stayed on top of our infrastructure needs. We know that we have generations of underinvestment that are now coming to fruition. And that means that our pipes leak somewhere in the vicinity of 40 to 50% of the water we pay to treat. It means that our wastewater treatment plants are frequently non-compliant, and high rainfall event sees wastewater discharge into our precious rivers and harbours. It means that our water storage is insufficient for our current population and climate, and has definitely no allowance for growth or climate change. So that brings us on to the latest reports. And what the latest reports tell us is that we have not been especially good custodians of our ratepayers' money. Our systems have simply not been adequate. We all agree that we need to improve how Wellington Water operates and restore confidence to the community. And I think we can all agree that water reform is badly needed, and we can't allow today's conversation or these reports to derail where we need to head in terms of water reform. So in a minute, I want to hand the meeting to Nick and Pat to talk through the reports, to tell us what we've learned, what we are going to change, and how the committee can have assurance that the changes are occurring and that Wellington Water is once again worthy of our trust and confidence. I would also like to reiterate that this is about solutions, not about blame, and the standing orders require that members are respectful to one another and to staff. And I'm in the chair and I don't get that opportunity very often, so I will lay down the law if anyone gets out of line. So I would now like to offer Pat and Nick to come to the table and talk through the reports for us. I think we'll start with an opportunity for us to ask questions about the content of the reports. We haven't really had that up till now, so this is our first opportunity to really delve into what the reports are telling us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll start if that's all right. The first thing is to say I'm sorry that we're here today. Sorry that we're here talking about value for money, and be assured we are working to restore public confidence. It shouldn't be a surprise that we're here today. Since I started, I've been talking about my doubts about us getting value for money. We commissioned these reports soon after I started, but we haven't waited for those reports to land. I've pushed the staff hard to make changes in anticipation of these reports arriving. They couldn't understand why I had a hard deadline that everything had to be done by the end of February, but now they understand why. And I just want to talk through some of the changes we have made, the bigger ones. So we restructured the organisation to an orthodox model to simplify decision making, and that has made a huge difference already to the efficiencies of the organisation. And we've still got a lot more to do there. Now that I've created these functional pyramids, I have to make sure they talk effectively to each other. So we're now in the midst of a project to define information flows between them. Normally, you might give them 2 or 3 weeks to settle in. They had a day, and then we're talking about the next phase. My time is tight. We need to make a lot of changes. We've changed the organisation's culture from one of learned helplessness to one of listening and action. People say I'm driving change, but I'm not really. I've really just unleashed the hounds. Staff have been keen for change, and now I find one of my problems is I get stopped in the corridor with suggestions, and the list is steadily growing. And realistically, we won't get them all done in the next 15 months. There just isn't time. And the organisation doesn't have the capacity to cope with every change that's needed. So we're picking the best bang for our bucks. We've reset the consultant and contractor panel arrangements. I spent some time over the weekend signing a wad of contract documents that change the way we work with those contractor and consultant panels. Not quite all of them. There was 5 that needed some tweaking, but I had hoped to say we have, but we are substantially there, and by tomorrow I will have signed them all. That will certainly increase the amount of competitive tension that we can apply, and we will also increase the amount of open tendering that we do. And one of the things we've taken back is the ability to select the right contractor and consultant for the project with a track record being one of our considerations. And that's huge in itself. I mean, that's make sure that we're talking with the right people about the right job. We've restructured the Operations and Maintenance Alliance. We've moved 55 people back from the Alliance over the last, since August last year. And the most recent 30 of them, they're the key staff that know our network. They provide advice on priorities, they schedule the work, they check the quality of their work, and they check invoices and value for money. Up until now, they've been sitting within the Alliance and couldn't do that job for us, and now we have them back. We've restructured the finance team, put more resources in there, and we've improved our financial controls, including stopping the automatic payment of invoices, which is just absolutely mission critical. So from now on, no invoice gets paid without authorization by the appropriate staff member. And when we announced that, I mean, that puts huge pressure on our finance team. We'll probably need to increase the size of the team, but they're delighted that change is being made. It's always worried them. I mean, as I said, I'm not driving change here, just putting things to right. And we've changed our internal audit program with finance processes being one of the focus of internal audits. And I've also made it clear to our internal auditors that they, as far as I'm concerned, they report to the chair of the audit committee, and she defines the program. Hopefully we get a mixture of both, but I want far more external view. So there's nothing in the Deloitte recommendations that we haven't addressed or readily addressed. There's an appendix that lists the recommendations and lists what we are doing. And we are probably 95% of the way through that list. It's been hard work doing all that while trying to keep the plane flying, but we are well down that track. I estimate our ballpark savings at the moment, we're probably about $5 million per annum better off than we were 3 months ago in terms of efficiencies and change the way we do things, and that'll steadily ramp up over time. I mean, there's projects that are in play. I can't unpick those, they have to roll out. But already we're starting to, in fact, we went to the extent of taking some work that had been allocated to the contractors panel, took it back from them and said we want to advertise it. They questioned that, said that work had been given to them, but no contract had been signed, so we're certainly keen to test the market more widely than we have. Now, I'm not offering those savings back to the councils. Let's face it, there's a huge amount of work in front of us, no shortage of a list of things that we need to do in the capital and operating budgets area. So our attention is that make the dollars go further. So I wanted to turn to the reports themselves. And another apology here. Look, I didn't want to be controlling the message from those reports or avoiding responsibility. So we didn't try and put too much of an explanation in with them, because that would look like we were not taking that responsibility. And I particularly did not want to be seen to be interfering with the production of those reports. And I'm pleased I did that in some ways, because even when we prepared the summary reports, we were challenged, who wrote those summary reports? Was that Wellington Water staff? And we had to say, no, that was Russell McVeigh. They have done that to keep us safe. But on the other hand, I wish I had, because there has been a considerable amount of misunderstanding and misinterpretation about those reports that I want to address. There was two statements in there. Unplanned water supply maintenance expenditure per kilometre increased threefold between 27 and 22, and inflationary pressures between 29 and 22 accounted for 1/3 of it. And the other one was the average expenditure per kilometre on unplanned water supply maintenance was nearly 3 times higher than the peer council average. I think the critical word that a lot of people missed out of that was the per kilometre. So this wasn't per job, it was per kilometre. It was the easiest way we were trying to do this work quickly, that the people we were employing to do this benchmarking could come up with readily available statistics. And I read it and understood it, but clearly a lot of people misunderstood it. That the graphs show cost per kilometre, not cost per job. Unfortunately, those two messages have been translated into we are paying 3 times too much. And that is not correct, absolutely not correct. The facts are these, and you may recognise some of these words from the letter from the Chief Executive of Fulton Hogan. Old pipes break more often. Old pipes are more expensive to fix. They don't like being dug up. They're delicate, that you sometimes have to chase a long way back to find a robust piece of pipe to fix them. So while we will pursue more value for money, the graph on page 11 of your agenda, but in particular the red line, what that is showing is the impact of network fault runaway. That steadily ramping up in expenditure is a reflection of the effort that's going in to fix leaks. And you'll recall, I think at the first time I sat here as Chief Executive, I talked about how this was going to be that if the money tap turned on today, it'll be 11 years before we had a day as good as today, but the money tap won't turn on for 2 more years, so that'll be 2 years out, 2 years back, but it'll be 15 years before we have a day as good as today. So we will pursue value for money, but you can expect that curve will continue to climb for the next 6 or 7 years and then start to taper off. Well, it'll taper off over that time and then start to come back down, but roughly 14, 15 years before we get back to where we are today. The authors were trying to point out the growing imbalance between planned water maintenance and reactive water maintenance, which is a symptom of network fault runaway. But unfortunately, those words got lost between the main report and the summary report. And again, I apologise for that. But there are other issues that are out of our control, and I want to talk about some of those as well. When I've been talking to councils, I frequently get challenged on our traffic management costs. And look, I haven't wanted to embarrass a councillor by pointing it out to them, but councils are the road controlling authority. You set the standards for traffic management. We have to comply with them. I know the Transport Agency are introducing a risk-based approach to temporary traffic management to keep costs of traffic management and maintenance costs down. It would be great if the local authorities in the Wellington region could follow suit and perhaps even adopt a consistent approach to traffic management throughout the region. That would certainly help. Another thing that's talked about a lot is Wellington is an expensive place to work, particularly on roads. It was pointed out to me last night by a concerned engineer that the Transport Agency has been capturing some data on the cost of working on roads throughout New Zealand. It's one of their insight reports. It's on their website. But that shows over a 3-year period the cost of maintenance, operations and renewals, and shows all the councils. So the most expensive council in New Zealand is Wellington. its costs, its average costs are 2.5 times the 4 councils that we were benchmarked against for water maintenance costs. Now, look, that's not Wellington City Council's fault. That's just a fact of the terrain. Under the asphalt of the Wellington CBD, reinforced concrete roads, they've got a massive amount of asbestos cement reseal, which is expensive, asphalted concrete, sorry, to replace. The bus routes have cement mixed in with the base course, making them very hard to dig up. Other factors like the volume of traffic, narrow streets, restricted work times, tunnels, bridges, and numerous retaining walls, both above and below the road, make it an expensive place to operate. And of course, although we try and keep our water mains in footpaths and berms, they do get crowded. And so we end up with a lot of them in the roads, and that also drives costs. Another thing I just want to talk about is lack of economy of scale with our pipe renewals. So I think I've mentioned that last year we relayed 24 kilometres of pipe. This year we're going to relay 9 kilometres of pipe. And I mentioned that that means an average age, we're aiming for an average replacement age of 670 years. So when we dropped from 24 kilometres to 9 kilometres, that meant contractors were laying off staff. So when we try and build up again, those staff will be reluctant to come back. Also, contractors will be reluctant to invest in good gear. There's just no guaranteed pipeline of work. If I was trying to really minimise the cost of pipe renewals, I would pick a suburb and I'd do 40 or 50 kilometres in that suburb in a year. And they wouldn't have relocation costs, traffic management would be relocated, and you would blitz a suburb. Maybe not 40 or 50, but you would limit the number of places that you work in a year, whereas we're doing something for every council and don't get any of those economies of scale. So another issue for us is plans in the draw. So we have 97 capital projects on hold at the moment. 30 are to the detailed design or ready for procurement. So there's money that we've spent that no one's getting any benefit for, again, because of the uncertainties. You know, there was a capital budget, and then as we get ready to go on it, we have to stop. Those things make it hard for us to achieve value for money. So although we are chasing value for money, and we will make a difference, we are already making a difference, there are factors outside our control that don't help. But if I have a message for you, it's the same message I think I've given every council. If you want to drive down maintenance costs, then the new water company is the key. That company will be able to find sufficient funding for renewals and start this region on its way back, and it will also provide consistent funding for reactive maintenance. Because that's one of the other challenges we have is we ramp up, got to get leaks down. So coming up to summer, we're flat out fixing leaks. Fulton Hogan will be busy, their subcontractors will be busy. And then the money starts to run out, so we wind down the work, which means subcontractors get laid off. And eventually, if it gets bad, we start focusing just on the priority ones. But what that means is that we're only fixing the priority ones, we must be monitoring the rest to make sure they aren't a priority one yet, which means we'll be going to visit the priorities 2s, 3s and 4s, probably lesser as you get down, to make sure they aren't too bad yet. And then when they really get bad, we fix them, which of course costs more money. So we've gone to visit the site several times, not done anything, and then when we do go to it, it's when it's expensive. And then when money becomes available again, you know, we've got to get the leaks down, we then have to try and persuade some of these subcontractors to come back and work for us. And you can imagine they're probably not keen on that. So then it's hard, and probably they may have been carrying staff during that time. They may want some of that money back, and we're in no position to negotiate then. So we scramble to find crews sometimes. And a new recent development is we fix the leak but don't properly patch it because we don't have enough money for that, which probably means that come the start of the new financial year, we'll go out and do a lot of patches and spend a whole lot of water maintenance money, but not actually fix any leaks. And that'll make our statistics look bad too. So as I say, the solution is the new water company. I'm delighted that the Wellington region is leading the charge in this respect, but it desperately needs it. So as I said last time, please hurry. So there's just one other thing I want to talk about, and that's our chair. When it became clear that the chief executive was going to change, there was a number of staff that started wanting to tell their story. And the person they went to was Nick. He took the notes, he promised them we would do something about it. He didn't even reveal their identities to start with. And he is seen within the organisation as a beacon of change. We're trying to unpick a culture of learned helplessness. We're trying to encourage our staff to raise their hand and say, something's wrong here, we need to fix it. So here we are, our first proactive piece of action, and people are questioning whether the chair should resign. What message does that send to my staff or to me in terms of, is this a safe place to be? I have to say that he has made a huge contribution to the progress we've made, and certainly, particularly in the last week, fronting the media and fielding a lot of questions on behalf of the organisation, and a lot of them about asking him, is he going to resign? Well, I can tell you from the organisation's point of view and from my point of view, that would be an absolute disaster. There's been much made of this conflict with his being Chief Executive of Infrastructure New Zealand. To me, I see that as a real advantage, that the contacts he has throughout New Zealand and the people he can put me in contact with. He's reported that conflict. He's raised it himself at the last two meetings. He's raised it so many times with me, I'm getting sick of talking about it. And it's a very clear understanding with the board and with me that if we think in any way he is not acting in the interests of Wellington Water, we will call him on it and he will step aside. But if I have a criticism, I think that he's probably carried too much load in the last week or so. And again, I repeat, he's a champion of the changes we are driving. So thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Do you want to talk now, Nick, or shall I open it up for questions about the report and about Pat's comments?
Whichever direction you want to go. I'm happy to talk, but I'm also happy to listen to questions. So,
okay, do you want to?
thanks. Okay. Well, kia ora. It's a rather unorthodox last set of words from a chief executive to a chair or about a chair, but I'd like to begin by saying, on behalf of the board and my colleagues, Mahina Pukitapu and Leanne Southey here, Bill Bayfield is unfortunately overseas, but we would like to unreservedly apologise for the results presented to you in the last week and the ongoing set of errors that Wellington Water has had over the last 3 years. I think it's really important, though, that we link those errors. These are not isolated things. They are a cascade of problems. And before I was appointed to the board, and the week before I was appointed to the board in 2022, it was revealed that fluoride in the region was not being added to our water supply as it should have been. And that report that came from the fluoride debacle told us that, as Pat said, there has been a culture of learned helplessness. So we've had our eyes wide open on that challenge, but it's fair to say it's been a bit like an onion as we've peeled off the layers. I just want to say, I know from your perspectives, whether you're mana whenua representatives here or you're representing communities as councils, I know from my time as an elected representative that the basic services that Wellington Water provides go to the core of people and environmental health and how important they are to our neighbourhoods and communities that rely on it. And We just haven't always got that right, and I think it's important to say that as well. So Wellington Water was going towards a 3-water reform under the previous government. We were supposed to be into a new entity by now. That hasn't happened, but you are still on the way to a new entity, hopefully, and quite soon. The board has not lost focus on that. In fact, it's central to what we're trying to prepare for. All the problems that have surfaced up until today would have gone into that old 3-water entity had it been formed. The future entity that you will form will actually be better off because we haven't just identified these issues, as Pat has outlined. We have improved or fixed 95% of them. I'm okay to take criticism for not having moved fast enough at times, because I'm really confident that the action we have taken has been significant and it will last on into the new entity for years to come. Things are better at Wellington Water, but we haven't moved as fast as we should have at times. I do want to talk about the conflict issue a little bit as well. I've declared what I've considered to be a perceived conflict, and our board has managed that. The Chief Executive of Fulton Hogan is on the board of the industry organisation that I run. It's a membership organisation, and we do advocacy and policy work on behalf of the infrastructure system and the issues that are confronted. I don't have any more insight into his or any of our other members' commercial dealings than anybody in this room. And my small not-for-profit doesn't benefit in any way from my involvement as a director and chair of Wellington Water. For the record, there is a general manager of Wellington City Council who is on my board also, because Wellington City Council is also a member of my organisation. We're actually a small country. I think we know that. We're a village. And there are lots of crossovers, and the Wellington Water Board has, all of us, declared the conflicts that we have. As you would expect, the key with any conflict is there must be an interest at odds with the duty the individual is pursuing or carrying out in the position they hold. This would need to be identified, and it does not seem that there is any such interest that compromises me in either entity. Neither Wellington Water nor Infrastructure New Zealand have any financial or any other relationship that would be capable of leverage or influence to the advantage of myself or others, or a particular business in a professional capacity. The contractual arrangements for Wellington Water, which, as I'm sure you have heard, we have changed, were in place when I joined the board, and they have been in place until Pat has made these changes. So we have more competitive tension that gets better value for money for you and for all residents in the Wellington region who pay a water bill. We, as a board, were concerned that with only 4 directors, and given the risk of perception of interest, that it would look odd if I had stepped aside from these important decisions. If I had stepped aside, it may have appeared that I didn't wholeheartedly support the direction that I've been pursuing since you as shareholders gave us the instruction to pursue better value for money in the letter of expectation last year. So I made the choice to stay and fulfil my duty as a director. Another indicator of a conflict would be lack of transparency. And it's been perfectly clear in the stakeholder environment and indeed in the media that I've had these 2 roles for some time. So rather than a conflict of interest, I think there's a good argument here that there is an alignment of interests for which works for both organisations, because I get knowledge respectively from both roles that help me fulfil duties. But I want to give you the assurance, lastly, on this topic, that at every point in my time as a director of Wellington Water, I have worked for the best interests of the company, of its shareholders, and of residents of the Wellington region. Last year, the Excel spreadsheets and the process that Wellington Water used to put together $500 million worth of annual budgets failed. In fact, more like about $7 billion worth of budgets. That's no surprise, because no business of this size and complexity, running 6 individual council budgets with the required regular reporting, should be working off such basic systems. Wellington Water as an entity is literally money in, money out, with some great people with expertise. But for too long, in very stressful conditions and a poor culture, it's been under stress. It's never been given the resources to build up its systems and indeed many of its processes too. The risk, I don't say that as blame to any of you. It's a risk that you have taken and your predecessors have taken, and it's risk that I've accepted as a director on your behalf, and that we've reported through to you at every point since the budget era last year. And it wasn't just the systems, there were poor processes, resources and controls in place to ensure that we met your needs through that report, through our reporting. We will continue to reduce that risk over time, but this is a risk of lack of resourcing that you carry in your assets as well. Pat left our board as a water engineer and with significant local government experience, and joined the company as chief executive in September last year, which was a terrific move for you and for us. From the moment we had the budgetary failure, Pat and I have worked, as has the board, as a team to get things sorted. We've acted on the plans that we've put in front of you, and we've been laser focused on that delivery. So last week, there was some shocking information, many of it from a long time ago, but nonetheless, we decided to put that in front of you. This week should be about the action that we've taken, that Pat has outlined, to ameliorate and reduce risk and improve the performance of Wellington Water. Just as a bit of a sort of an indication of the lack of systems, you know, Wellington Water's got around 500 staff, but we can't even pay them from our own payroll system. We go very gratefully to Wellington City Council to use theirs. We manage billions of dollars worth of assets, but we don't have the proper structure to record the information and understand the true state of those assets as well we should. And there is no finance system that talks to asset management either. We've got a very small board that works well together. We would like some friends. We all have governance experience. We're all qualified in different parts of the sectors that we move in, and that, I think, helps Wellington Water. I'd like to add mention to the staff of the organisation as well, because after the budgetary failure, and the chief executive left the company, but before Pat could commence in the role, we asked people to think about the kind of gaps that they might see, and lots of people spoke up, many anonymously through a whistleblower process, but they were really brave and they didn't feel they had the ability to speak up before, or they hadn't been listened to. The improvements that you see is the work and the ideas and the thinking from those people. And actually, those people have the skills and will be a mainstay of the new entity that you form. So I do want to speak for those people with you today. I mean, they identified the lack of IT systems, the poor financial processes and controls, the lack of controls leading to a higher risk of fraud, and those proper commercial arrangements with outside entities that didn't lead to get the best deals that we should have over time. Look, we've done a lot of work as an entity on leaks funded by yourselves. And I think Wellingtonians are actually seeing, oh, there aren't as many leaks out in the streets. But we were losing 80 million litres of water a day, enough to fill the stadium to the brim once every 2.5 weeks. That's appalling. And it's an impact on our environment that we can't afford any longer. We've worked, I think, very well in partnership with everybody around this table to get that fixed. As Pat said, it's about renewal now. It's not about patching pipes, but it's going to take time. And actually, we need to be focused and stable to get into a new entity, to get those capital works funded and done as soon as possible. I know that local government is a bit slow and clunky, and that we do take time to do things. But I want to give you the assurance, lastly, that I can look into your eye today and say that I've done on your behalf and on behalf of the communities in the region everything I can. We've acted on evidence, we've taken that action, and Wellington Water is better today and more effective and more open and transparent than it was a year ago. We found the issues. Having 6 bosses, maybe 10 in a political environment, means that sometimes things take a bit longer, but you actually, before you act, you have to have the evidence to act. And I think we've done that, and we've put that in front of you unfettered and in a very open way. I look forward to Friday's meeting. The board set an ends-based strategy. The key one was, well, there were several, but you'll see those, but the key one was about transition, and we can't afford to lose focus on that now. If you agree with that ends-based strategy, or if you don't, let us know, but please let us govern for the next few months until Wellington Water ceases in an entity with those principles in mind. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, both Pat and Nick. So I propose we tackle the next bit in 2 parts. So although Nick said, last week was about the report and we should be moving on to solutions, I do want to provide a bit of an opportunity for us to ask some questions on the report, because this is the first time that we've really come together as a group with the reports in front of us. You'll recall when we met on Monday, we hadn't actually seen the report. So does anyone have any questions about the content of the report and what it's actually telling us? I think that key message that although the cost of leaks per kilometre is 3 times some other councils, the report also tells us that we have 3 times the number of complaints. So, how we interpret this is a bit of a nuanced thing, and we need to take that away. So does anyone have any questions on the actual content of the report before we move on to the next bit? Okay, I have some questions. Sorry. Regarding the benchmarking, so there were a number of different types of benchmarking used. Can you explain those to us? And also, it appears that Taumata Arawai ran a benchmarking exercise and then stopped, so that we don't have benchmarking post-2022. That's what I interpreted from the report. Is that a correct conclusion? And if so, I think getting Taumata Arawai back onto a benchmarking process would be really useful.
My understanding was one of the problems was trying to get access, in the restricted time, to make sense of our data for the last couple of years. And so we ran with what we had, which was a little bit out of date, but it didn't paint us in a good light. So it wasn't as if we tried to hide anything more. But I think there has been a lack of national benchmarking work done as well. I recall with Nelson City Council, we used to use data that Water New Zealand had, but I'm not sure that they're doing that either. So I think the answer there was pretty much I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there were a couple of different benchmarking reports or tools used in that, and it appeared that one of the tools used was run by Taumata Arawai, but that ceased. I just wonder if we could explore that a little bit more maybe for Friday, and potentially write a letter to Taumata Arawai asking that they reinvigorate that, if that is indeed the case. That conversation sparked a few more questions. So Mayor Whānau and then Mayor Baker. No? Oh, sorry. Mayor Whānau first and then Deputy Mayor Setterfield.
Kia ora kurua, and thank you for the many changes that have happened in this short time. I just have a couple of questions, mainly for clarification. So, was there any thinking from the field force report that went into this process? And the CE at the time rejected the report, but I'd like to know what the board did with the report.
I think that I can answer part of that, and Pat can answer the other part because he was on the board as well. But my sense from the field force report was that the board spent quite a bit of time actually considering and thinking about that, and we found it useful. The Field Force 4 report was landed and received at this committee a year ago, and that actually is what drove the value for money instruction that the Wellington Water Committee gave Wellington Water. And in actual fact, it's led to this, a lot of this work now as well, because we've gone after value for money because it was in our letter of intent.
And I read the report and thought that it made a lot of sense. I thought that it identified things that Wellington Water could do better, but it also identified things that the shareholder councils could do better as well. But to be honest, since I've started, I feel like the most reviewed person in Christendom and haven't got back to it, but I will. One of the things we are doing is pulling together all the recommendations from all the reviews that we've had done, and I fully intend to look at the Field Force 4 report again as part of that process. But I'm sorry, I haven't got to it yet. Once I get through this week, then it'll be on the list, that's for sure.
We've heard in the media that Wellington Water has known since June last year that the Commerce Commission is investigating its contractors for fraud. Was the board aware of this?
So one of our contractors informally told us that the Commerce Commission was investigating some contractors for what we're not quite sure. Probably we suspect cartel behaviour. But the legal advice was stay out of it. That the Commerce Commission wanted to tell us they would have, and they didn't. And we understand, well, I've seen a copy of the letter from the Commerce Commission to one of the contractors saying they've investigated and are happy with what they found. Well, that's my paraphrasing, but they weren't going to investigate any further. So no, we weren't invited, and it wasn't a party that we wanted to gate crash. And yes, we did tell the board, but it wasn't formally reported. It was verbal advice.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sedler-Footer.
Thank you. My question, Pat, you talked a bit earlier about some of the contributing factors to the cost of work done in Wellington City. But you know, things are quite different for us in South Wye. We're obviously not a metro. We don't have narrow winding streets or roads built for buses. Has there been any work done to sort of separate South Wye out and understand the cost dynamics there?
No, we haven't broken it out into any individual councils at all. We were looking at the service we were providing to the region.
Do you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think can you look at that, Pat? Because I think it's been well acknowledged by our council, or certainly well questioned by our council in terms of costs for service delivery, and you know, and acknowledge that we are different. So I think it would be great to see some work done in defining those differences and understanding those costs.
We can perhaps have a look at a high level, but my off-the-cuff opinion would probably be that South Wye Rapid District Council is probably getting the best deal of any of the councils in terms of value for money.
Thanks for that, Pat. I do think that that all the councils are going to want a certain level of assurance around some of their specific projects in relation to how they were, you know, how they were procured. And I know that the report doesn't go into it, and you haven't gone into it so far about, I guess, what a reasonable market rate might have been. But I do think people are going to want the information at their council level as to, you know, how their big projects were treated from a procurement process and what the overcharge might have been in the order of if we were paying, strictly speaking, market rates. So I do think we're going to need to delve into that a little bit just to give individual councils assurance around some of their major projects.
So we're happy to do that. One of the challenges will be, until we've advertised some jobs and got competitive tenders, we're not quite sure what the market rate for Wellington will be. We know from the work that we've done and the things I just talked about, we know that working in Wellington City, for example, is more expensive. And I've had lots of informal comment from contractors saying that for the reasons I've just described. But yeah, we're happy to have those conversations one-on-one, but it won't be that we're not being helpful. It's that until we get to test the market for each type of product, we won't know. But we're happy to have those discussions, certainly. Can I just, there's one thing I actually forgot to point out. So one of the things I did was looked at our unplanned reactive maintenance expenditure for water, wastewater and stormwater, because if we were being consistently overcharged per kilometre, then you expect that wastewater and stormwater would have also gone up by a similar amount, but they haven't. When I first looked at it, I was delighted to see that since 21-22 to 24-25, wastewater has only gone from 9.3 million to 10 million, and stormwater has reduced from 3.7 to 3. Stayed pretty static at 3.7 million. And I'm thinking, excellent, that's great news. So that shows that, again, the mounting water costs is network fault runaway. But then I realised, but our wastewater network cannot be in any better condition. We should have been putting more money into that too, because they've got just as long a network of wastewater, it's just as old. The only problem is that when it fails, it doesn't burst to the surface, as I've described. So there is another mounting problem there, and that's the condition of our wastewater network. So again, the solution is, so proof again that we don't think that we are paying 3 times over the odds for the work that we're getting, and but we do need this new company as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Representative Faulkner, you've got a question?
Yeah, thank you. 2 very quick questions. In the summary of the report and the actions that were proactively taken against the recommendations, it's hard to kind of marry up sometimes the action the recommendation. Like as an example, just the first one where it talks about employees being clear, everybody being clear on what their roles and responsibilities are, and then the action is a restructure. And so I kind of struggle sometimes. How does a restructure help? And I see you but that's just one example. Yeah, there's one example of many where it's just I see the action, but I think how does that achieve a response to the recommendation? There's a few others, but I won't go through. So help me understand that a bit better.
So we were caught here. Natalie, who pulled this together, had very comprehensive answers, but it was a huge summary sheet. So I asked her to shorten it down, and now I'll have to apologise to her. But so when I started work, I've lived and breathed 3 waters all my career. Even as a chief executive, I kept ending up in 3 waters issues. And I start there, and I cannot understand the structure. It's so complicated. And it's been deliberately set up so to create a natural tension within the organisation. So no one group manager had the ability to make a decision on anything. So, and that was fine when the organisation was smaller and our budgets were smaller, and it was a case of walking down the hallway and having a discussion. But now what it meant was 3, somewhere between 2 and 6 people trying to arrange a meeting to discuss something. And if they didn't achieve absolute consensus, then they would arrange another meeting, which would take another 2 or 3 weeks. And then if it didn't get sorted, then it would come to the senior leadership team, and that meeting would last all day. And so on day 2, I announced we were going to change back to a more functional structure where we wouldn't have all these endless conversations and decisions made by committees, that we would have a structure where people are responsible for something and they make a decision about it and carry that responsibility. So that's what I mean by that, Valerie.
I don't have a problem with streamlining. I think if we're going to streamline, we just need to make sure that the information we do put in is answering or giving us, at least pointing us in the direction of what the recommendation, or what the response to the recommendation is. The second question that I have is, Let's park the reports for a minute, and it speaks to culture, and you've spent a bit of time talking about culture, and culture starts from the top of an organisation. So my question is, what is it that the staff, and to a certain extent stakeholders as well, are seeing in the way in which you two are role modelling and setting the scene for culture that wasn't there before? So what is it the people in the organisation are seeing that points to the cultural improvements?
It's a great question. And I've touched a little bit on it when we had the change in chief executive, and between those times, being accountable, I think, is one big one. So actually coming here and apologising to you all and showing how we're going to fix things. If you think about that culture of learned helplessness, actually being powerful to be able to enact a change and improve things. And so I think part of that journey has been being more upfront with you through your long-term planning advice around the real risks to your networks and your plants and the kind of investment levels that were needed. And Wellington Water has traditionally shied away from a lot of those discussions. So I think we've seen that change. But it's also, I think, around being prepared to speak up and talk about the challenges within the organisations and people's everyday things that they saw and the challenges they had. And as I've said earlier, a lot of that stuff is in these reports. I know you didn't want me to go back to the reports, but it's there. So Pat, you...
So for me, the day I knew we were winning was, it was a board meeting and one of the board members asked a question and I thought I gave a typically brilliant answer, and one of my staff said, "No, Pat, you're not quite right," and corrected me in front of the board. And I thought, that's fantastic. That would never have happened. And so I felt that day was a very good day. And the staff member came and apologised afterwards, and I said, "Do not apologise. You saved me having to send an email out to the entire board saying I've inadvertently misled you." But the board also noticed it and thought that was a very good sign.
So I've got three questions from this side of the room. I've got Mayor Whānau, Mayor Baker and Councillor Edwards.
So just two questions. The $5 million in savings that you found from the recent changes, so where exactly was that coming from?
So that was, I think I used the words, that's my ballpark estimate. If I didn't, then I should have, and I've got them written down. So I'm thinking, I think the improvements to our structure and the efficiencies we're getting out of that will probably save us about $500,000 a year in staff time. The changes we've made to our engagement by bringing in the work that was being done by contracted communication staff and bringing that in-house will save us $500,000 a year. We were paying a management fee to our consultants and contractor panels. We've stopped that. That was $1 million. I expect that we're bringing a series of project manager roles in-house. I think some 30 of those. I think they'll probably save me about $1 million a year. And then competitive tenders, I think, will produce at least $1 million in the next 2 or 3 months in terms of savings. Once some of those tenders close and we compare them with our estimates, I think we'll save work on having more control over minor capital works and where they go and getting competitive prices for those. So that's $5 million. I think also we'll start seeing some savings in challenging invoices and measuring value for money. I think there's a tidy sum there as well. So that adds up to roughly $6 million. And I mean, this is a $500 million business per annum. So that's just 1%. And I know we can do a lot better than that, but it's a start. And that was me trying to think of those on a Sunday afternoon. So there wasn't, it's my, I guess, experience and gut feel about where we are, But I know that when I made changes to the organisation, two of my group managers came up to me and said, you know, the changes you've made, they're giving me back a day a week to do my job. You've got no idea what a difference that makes. You know, so it's that sort of improvement. We've got a 2 A3-page list of committees and working parties that meet on a regular basis to make decisions because of the appalling structure we have. My strong expectation is 75% of those decisions will be made at the Chief Operating Officer's table with the head of capital projects, treatment plants and networks meeting to talk about these things.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. Can you clarify what contractor panels and what that fee was?
So when I issued the instruction that we were to break up the panels, we had to rewrite the contracts or formally amend the contracts. And then one of my staff came to me and said, so what about the management fee? I said, what management fee? And it turns out that we have been paying our contractor and consulting panels to liaise with us, to work with other contractors on jobs, and to share health and safety information. And to my way of thinking, that's just a cost of doing business. So I reacted badly, and he took that as, no, you want that deleted? I said, absolutely. And so that was worth $1 million last year. That's what I'm talking about, the management fee.
Wonderful, thank you. Sorry, just one more question. I hate to go back to this field force report again, but I need the clarification because it was an important report to us. So it fed into the letter of expectations kind of mid 2024. Earlier. Yeah. Okay. We sent it to Wellington Water around about November, October the previous year. I just want to know, was there anything done outside of the letter of expectations done as a result of that report?
So by the time I got on the board, the chief executive had publicly rejected that report. So it was it took some time for me to even see a copy. And as I said, it's one of the changes I want to make is I do want to look at that report and see what we can apply for the betterment of the region.
Appreciate that.
Mayor Baker and then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Can I make a comment, Ros, at the same time? Because I'm going to have to leave. I've got 60 residents to swear in and I won't beat the traffic. So can I ask my question and then make a comment? And I'll zoom from the car. Sorry. Thank you for that. Page 11, the chart, very confusing. Everybody seems to think we've been overcharged by 30% the whole way. And I did get our sewage tank checked on that thinking, oh gosh, we've overpaid on the 98 million. So I know that was a different process. I'm pleased the consultant and the contractor panels have been changed because I've always had the contractors saying, we're not overcharging, it's the consultants on top. So I'm pleased you've changed that panel. Can you confirm that you will go to local contractors as well, not just the large ones? We've been asking for locals to be used.
So what we intend to do is advertise some jobs, some big ones, some small ones. I mean, we want to check what rate we get for relay work. So they will have the opportunity to bid for the work, but it will always be a price quality. So the track record will be part of it. So if they haven't relayed a water main before, then they will struggle to get the job, and they may have to find some way of being a subcontractor for somebody. But I don't know whether this organisation is going to have the time, but it is something that I do want to start giving some thought to, is how we get more players in the market. And that's how do we help some of the smaller contractors get the experience? How do we give some jobs out that are so small that they can get them? Maybe we do allocate them. No, we're not going to allocate anything. And help them to build up the track record so they can bid for bigger jobs. Because I think there is the other impression I get is that there is a shortage of contractors in the Wellington region.
Okay, thank you. You've probably seen my letter that I sent in today to the answer, the one that came from Wellington. We would like to take you up on an offer to come and visit our council, obviously. We do want value for money for our ratepayers. That's all we're asking for. We do know we are responsible as a part shareholder in this. We haven't been relaying. We have been doing our fixes for our water leaks. We haven't been doing our renewals because we have put our investment into our big tank, saving our harbour with iwi, so we know we've got renewals. Our council wants to get on with water reforms as quickly as possible. So I want to thank you both for coming in and fronting up, but bottom line is value for our ratepayers, and that's what our council is after. I can't go backwards, but we can go forwards and get more done. So I'm pleased you've had a culture change. I've heard a lot about that. I will take back to my CE, the traffic management. If we can change something on that, I will get it changed for you, because I know that cost is horrendous. So thank you for being upfront, and we just want the best for our ratepayers, because I don't believe you've overcharged on purpose. I know they've worked within a system. The report itself is just awful, but thank you. And I'm going to get the car, sorry.
Thank you very much. Please drive safely, even if you're Zooming. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think you're absolutely right with your comment before that every single council is going to want some information on their own projects and how they might have been impacted by what's happened. Hutt City Council certainly wants to know what works of ours have been impacted. Is it all capital projects? What's the impact for OPEX? Or is it just the projects tendered through the consultant and contractor panel? For those that did go through the panel, we definitely have questions around the extent to which we may have been overcharged, the reasons for that, and how those responsible might be making amends to Hutt ratepayers. But we'll take up Mr Doherty's offer to come and speak to councils about that. So we'll leave those there. So a couple of questions, though, going forward and speaking to the report that's in front of us. Could you give us a little bit more information on what the reset of the consultant and contractor panel arrangements actually mean, and also on what is meant by the performance framework, including pain sharing?
If I could just interject from the chair, actually that is my key takeaway that I wanted to raise today as well. What does reset mean? So I think we need a full, I don't know whether it's a procurement policy, but something which outlines the different services that Wellington Water seeks and what the process is, i.e. is it delivered via an alliance, is it delivered via a panel, is it delivered via open tender, and what the insurance and probity is around each of those different mechanisms. And also, you've talked about how you've been able to unpick some of the contracts, but obviously some of the contracts you won't be able to unpick overnight. And so what's the timing of the contracts that are in place, and when can that reset reasonably begin for all those different types of procurement process?
So we are in the midst of developing a policy or for how we will manage procurement from now on. These panels come to an end on 1 July 26 as well. And so one of the things that we need to talk with the transformation team is what do you want us to do in the interim? Because it would take 6 to 9 months to go through a full process to re-establish those panels. Look, we're not proposing to do away with the panels completely. If we had to advertise every job for a consultant, do a design and then advertise it for a construction or a design build, we would need a whole lot more staff and things would slow down dramatically, and probably we wouldn't get that much improvement in value for money. So one of the things we are defining is more value focused KPIs. We will decide which panel members we want to approach for prices. That may be 1, maybe 2, and that's consultants and contractors, but we will be picking ones that we know are good at the work. We've broken up the panel groupings for both the contractors and the consultants. There was effectively three groupings, and we would deal with one of those groups. And that meant that we didn't always have a direct relationship with the person that we wanted. So now we have a direct relationship with every one of those consultants and contractors, and can again deal with the one we want, and don't necessarily get the ticket clipped on the pass-through. We will be tendering a portion of the program so that we always have an idea of what the market value is. So then if we're negotiating with a contractor, we can, if they submit a price, we can say, look, we got a price for this 3 weeks ago that was 90% of what you're proposing. Why on earth would we pay more? But we don't have that information at the moment. We don't have a good idea of what the Wellington region looks like. We're changing our own internal processes, and as part of that's the restructuring I talked about, to speed up decisions and encourage decisions to be made by individuals rather than committees. And we're also strengthening our own commercial procurement team, because we want to be able to do more analysis of what's going on, and also what the background is. You know, we should have known a long time ago that it's more expensive to work on Wellington roads because of the geography and the geology, and we've always felt that, but it was just simply an email I received over the weekend that helped me identify it. But those sorts of things, we should be acting as a smarter purchaser as well. So those are the things we are doing immediately in terms of breaking up those panels, and also giving some thought to what a future model would look like, because it will not be good for the new company if the day they start they don't have any contractors or consultants in place.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Ebert? Next question from Mayor Guppy.
Just a comment. I do want to carry on from what Mayor Whanau said about the Field Force program, because, I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here if the Field Force program project had been taken seriously. It was fairly clear that, I mean, if it hadn't been for the CE resigning, then none of this work would have taken place. And so we tried a number of occasions to get that Field Force report discussed at the Wellington Water Committee meeting, and the chair refused, and Wellington Water, the CE said it was a distraction, and basically threw it in the rubbish tin. So we could have saved ourselves a lot of angst in the last year if that had been taken seriously.
Yes, and I apologise to the Wellington City Council when I was there 6 weeks ago, that we should have taken more notice of the Field Force 4 report, and I was sorry. I can't get that time back.
I understand, but we should have too at this committee meeting. At this committee, the fellow mayors rejected it too, and a number of times we tried to get it on to come and discuss it, and we were told, "You just got to do it for Wellington Water. We're not going to talk about it."
Okay, so I think we move on to kind of the assurance and what we want from Wellington Water moving forward. You've got a big table at the back of your agenda, which has the actions that are proactively being undertaken already. I guess, yeah, my big plea is that we get a little bit more of a detail around what restructure or reset or introduction means. So my particular issue with assurance from Wellington Water is that often lip service is paid to the fact that actions have been undertaken, but I really need to know what that action is in detail so that I can really hold the hand to the fire and make sure that that action is being delivered. And at the moment, there isn't quite enough detail in some of these proactive actions to allow me to do that. So that may be what you talked about, Pat, in terms of the more detail that you got rid of to make it ease of reading, which I thank you very much. But if we could inject some of that back in so we can actually really, you know, we've got another meeting on Friday, but we'll have our regular meetings and we really want to be able to assess progress against those actions. And at the moment, some of them, the way they're worded is a bit too fluffy to allow us to actually do that.
Yes, and I'm just hoping that she kept the original draft, or I'm dead. Do we need to turn that around by Friday, or can we?
No.
We will do it.
Just an opportunity for us to retouch base in terms of what other actions we want to see. So thinking in the flavour of, you know, what we want to see from Wellington Water moving forward, are there any other questions or comments people want to make around the table? So I've got Representative Puketapu Dentis.
Kia ora, Chair, and kia ora mai tātou. I guess I've got a few questions here, but I think I think, sort of one question in particular, and it's sort of framed against that point that you talked about, Pat, around the compounding effect that happens when you don't make the investment into infrastructure. The less you invest over time, it's going to get worse, and therefore it's going to be more expensive. And for me, looking down the track, as mana whenua, our view is always towards our mokopuna. What's going to be inherited by our mokopuna? What is the state of our waterways that are going to be inherited by our mokopuna? What is the state of our infrastructure that's going to be inherited by our mokopuna? And currently, what our mokopuna, our children, will inherit is significant rate increases and no real sign of increase of improvement of te mana o te wai for our waterways for a long, long, long time. And so for us, that's real. And ultimately, whether you're Wellington Water or you're the councils, you're all equally responsible from mana whenua's perspective for that cause of harm and neglect towards the infrastructure and to our waterways. But I'm not necessarily here to sort of go, to sort of say, here's the problems, but rather, what are the solutions, and what do you need from us for this to be successful? Because we've got a runway of 15 to 16 months until a new entity needs to be established. What do you need from us as mana whenua, as councils, to make sure that we can land this ship on the shore and a new CEO has stood up and a new board is there to run this forward? Because ultimately, that's what we need to be focused in on from my perspective. Otherwise, it'll just be a continued blame game. But ultimately, it's about our mokopuna. So what do you need from us? What do you need from mana whenua? What do you need from councils?
So the numbers are so big that I accept that councils cannot afford to tackle this on their own. I acknowledge that. I mean, this is not a problem that's of any one council's making. This is 20 to 30 years, I suspect, in some cases of underinvestment, and it's going to take a long time to turn that round. The only way, and I agree for the state of the networks in the Wellington region. I love this place, I really do. But all we can do is just take one step at a time, and the first step is to turn around and start travelling in the other direction. But the only organisation that's going to have the ability to do that is the new Wellington Water Company. And the sooner, and so if I had one plea, it's don't. I guess it's been my objective right from the start, is to make sure that Wellington Water is not an impediment to the smooth establishment of a new company, and that it can hit the ground running and start marching back back towards the daylighting effect. So that would be my one plea is, and it looks to be going very well at the moment, and it's really exciting, and could well be the first such company established in New Zealand, and that'll be great. That will be my one plea, that understand the importance of getting that organisation established and hitting the ground running as quickly as possible.
So online, I've got Deputy Mayor Sadler-Footer with a question, and then to Mayor Whānau.
Thank you. Just a small reminder that out of the shareholders of Wellington Water will in fact come 2 new water entities, not just one. But my question or my comment really is a solid assurance that each of the shareholder councils will get a far more detailed report detailing the position of any potential overspend over the period of time in a timely manner, because it's incredibly difficult at this point to have mokopuna thinking and to have mokopuna thinking investment with a company that, to be fair, at the moment, trust is broken. We have no real clarity. We have a report that suggests potentially three times higher spend or three times overcharge. Pat and Nick, you've spoken today and suggested perhaps that's not correct. Ultimately, it's our ratepayers who are funding this work, and we as councils need to be able to assure them that we are spending their money in the best possible way and that we are getting value for money for them. And at this point, I certainly can't put my hand on heart and say that. So councils need that detailed information from you on an individual basis to be able to better inform where they currently sit and how we move forward.
Just if I could provide a wee bit of an answer, in that I've got a few actions from our meeting today, and one of them is that I think Wellington Water need to address each council on a one-to-one basis to inform them about their costs and their major projects and provide some assurance around the procurement processes that have gone on. However, I would also just repeat that Pat mentioned that in order to work out a true market cost, some of these projects may need to go to market, or future projects may need to go to market. And so at this point in time, there's going to be a limit to the true market value that he can present to councils. But he does, I do think that it's really important that each council gets an opportunity to meet with you and drill into their individual costs.
Absolutely, because before a job is put to market, we already have an indication in South Y that several of our major jobs, if put to local contractors, would be or could be delivered significantly cheaper than through Wellington Water. So we must have, in a timely manner, some assurance from Wellington Water on the future.
Do you want to add anything further, or just I've noted that as a key action from this?
So there is a difference in the language here, Madam Chair. You're talking about that we will meet with each council and talk about what we think is going on at the moment. I mean, some projects we will be getting value for money because they will have been competitively tendered, and others won't. But the prospect that I'm now going to commit my staff to a sort of a historical review and detailed reports on what's gone on. No. I mean, I may as well just turn the lights off and not do anything for the next 2 or 3 months. So there is quite a difference. Happy to meet and discuss the current situation and where we think we're getting value for money and where we have suspicions, and see where that conversation goes from there. But detailed reporting on history, as you say, we're not even sure what market rates were, and there will be a gradual reveal on this, but we're happy to cooperate with every council on that basis.
So I do think our ratepayers, are asking questions, and we need to be able to answer them as far as possible. But also, we don't want to incur massive new costs on historically dredging up things from the past, especially when the organisation has a limited shelf life. I wonder if this is the kind of thing that you could come back to us on Friday with a bit more like, how are we going to manage to meet that balance? How are we going to manage to satisfy each council and their ratepayers around each of their projects, while at the same time not being onerously burdensome on the organisation? So if maybe you could have a think about that, and we'll review it again on Friday. Yippee. Councillor Mia Whānau, sorry, just about demoted you.
Cool, just a couple of final comments? Yes, from me. So thank you both for fronting up to a tense meeting, and I know a very tense week. For the record, I do want to say that Wellington City Council is committed to this pathway of reform and finding the best solution for our region, and these discussions help with that to ensure that the entity can operate as best as possible. I also want to acknowledge that the relationship between Wellington City Council and Wellington Water has always been tense, and we've seen a lot of that play out over the last week. We have written a letter with a majority support that lays out some actions We know we won't get support for all of those, especially the main one at the top. But I do think there are legitimately practical solutions that will not only help restore trust with the public, but will help rebuild the relationship between Wellington Water and Wellington City Council. So I would just ask to review those in good faith, and that I would like to debate that at Friday's meeting when Mayor Baker and Mayor Barry are here. Thank you.
I think that that a lot of the things you requested in that letter were imminently doable, and probably don't even need to be raised at this committee. You know, I do think that we should have both the CEO and the chair of the board coming to meet you at Wellington Water and being able to discuss these things. That's just a given as far as I'm concerned. So we will discuss that further on Friday. But yeah, I didn't really have any particular aversion to any of the other things that you raised in that letter. Anyone else have any other comments?
Just the final comment I would have is that in every interaction I've had with kaimei or staff and people at Wellington Water, I've found them to be professional and passionate people. And I don't want to lose sight of that as we get deeply into, you know, debating this stuff often in the public. So I would like to encourage there to be as much support as I'm sure there is for the staff to continue to do the great things that they're doing. Like Mayor Whanau, I thank you for coming along today. And can I finally say that I would like it specifically noted in bold that Mayor Guppy unitedly and wholeheartedly supported Mayor Whanau in an action that is a very rare thing to see in this forum. So I'd like that bolded in italics, please, for the record.
We're totally all about finding unity here today, so I'm definitely happy to support that. So in terms of closing remarks from me, if nobody has any other further comments, the key things that I've got is kind of take forwards for Friday or take forward to a future date. If you could get back to me about benchmarking information, what information there is out there and what benchmarking was used, because that does play into why the data cut off at 2022. I believe that was part of the reason. So if you could feedback on that. If you could have a think about what kind of council by council analysis would be appropriate to assure our ratepayers and assure the TAs that that either their services had been delivered for market value or what the quantification of an overcharge might have been. And thirdly, if you could just provide a bit more information around procurement policy KPIs. This was to the reset of contractors and the panel, like what exactly is being reset, how can we actually have oversight to ensure that those actions occur. That would be really great. So they were the three items I took away. Were there any further things that people noted around the table? Councillor Edwards?
Well, there's one more on Mayor Campbell-Barry's list, and that is whether there is anything else that needs to change or accelerate as part of the organisational capability plan to urgently demonstrate value for money for shareholders and ratepayers. If there's anything else that still needs to be done.
There's a lot to be done. I think we've talked about all the big issues, but we haven't ticked off everything we've ticked off the things on the Deloitte list, but there's the organisational improvement plan. I think there was 36 recommendations on that. We're going to look at the field force report. We have a lot of reports, and we want to pull those together. And realistically, I'm not sure that we can get all of those done before Wellington Water blinks out of existence. As I've said, we just don't have the capacity to keep on coping with change and delivering services for the community. So we will be looking at those, reporting them to the board, setting up a priority listing, and then we'll bring those back to the committee. But there are a lot of recommendations. And I think that, the pricing for even just the one from the Martin Jenkins review was something like $5 to $6 million. That's assuming we use consultants. We're doing some of those in-house ourselves for a lot less, but that slows us down as well. But am I aware of anything else big at the moment? No, at the moment. I think I've told everybody everything that's I know about, yes.
Carter, do you?
Just quickly, I think just for all of us and leading into Friday, we need to consider that if reform in this new entity is the state that we want to get to, what is it going to take for us to get there, and what does that organisation look like? And then we need to actually prioritise what are the things that Wellington Water needs to do now, so that when that organisation stands up, it's got the core essence and the bones of the organisation that we need to deliver the work that we want to do. And I think what we're going to need to do in that, as I said just before, is prioritise the things that we need to pay attention to and put our energy into. Otherwise, we'll be doing a whole lot of work that won't necessarily give us any benefit towards the new entity that we want to set up. And that's probably a little bit what I heard from both Nick and from Pete as well. So I think there's just that making sure that there's a balance around understanding the need to satisfy the community's desire to ensure that money's being spent in the right way, but also that we're building a new organisation as well, and our responsibility in ensuring the future of that is positive for our mokopuna. So kia ora.
Kia ora. So just to wrap up, I guess I'm really heartened by the conversation we've had today. It shows that we're all committed to water reform, and we're all committed to moving towards the new entity, and really our agreed priority is focusing on transition and what we need to do to Wellington Water now to ensure a smooth transition. So it's really great that we've got that unity around the table. And sure, there are so many reviews have been done into Wellington Water, and we need to make sure we're chipping away, eating the elephant one bite at a time. So if you could come back with some priority actions as to how we do that, that would be much appreciated. And I guess I just wanted to thank everyone around the table and everyone who came to this meeting today. It shows that we really all care about the water in our region, and for councillors and mayors around the table, there's been a lot of reports to read, a lot of letters, a lot of conversation. So if you've stayed on top of that, it's been a lot of work, and I thank you for staying engaged and staying interested and coming along to the meeting today. So we will close with the closing karakia. I'm told that there is a recommendation in regards to the paper. So the actions that we have, the recommendation that we have that was sent out with the paper was that the committee notes the actions that Wellington Water Limited proactively implemented in advance of the reviews, and I guess continues to implement today. Notes the release of the Deloitte report into concerns regarding Wellington Water Limited financial systems and processes, and the analysis of panel costs and valuation unit rates. So the Deloitte report was the one around procurement, and the ACOM report was the analysis of panel costs and valuation unit rates, and notes that the high level of unplanned water supply maintenance required to maintain the network in comparison to other peer councils. Does someone want to move that? Rawari, does someone want to second it? Mia Whānau's going to do it. They're not terribly significant motions, to be fair, but I guess it just wraps up the conversation we've had today. Okay, so in that spirit, all those in favour? Aye, carried. Right, I will now finish this off with the closing karakia, and then we can all go home to our whānau. Is it going to appear magically on the screen? There we go. Unahia, unahia I te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua I te ara takatū. Koia rā I rongo, whakahairia aki ki runga. Kia wātia, kia wātia. Ai rā kui wātia. Hau pomare.